What's up, Notjust developers? Welcome back to a new live tutorial. Today we are gonna build together an Amazon price tracker, which is going to be a full stack tutorial using React Native, Supabase, and BrightData. So, how did we get to this idea? Let me walk you through the process. Every time I was looking for some items on Amazon, I would go ahead and check the page a couple of times a week to see if there are any price changes. And more than often, you actually notice how the prices change for an item that you're looking for. After doing some research, I saw that this is a very common pattern, and Amazon would change the price of an item up to 8 times in a single day. So if there is these price differences, I think there is a business case that we can do and build an application that would track these prices and notify you whenever the price drops. I thought, could I be doing it in React Native, and what would it take? And in this tutorial, we're actually gonna build it. And by the end of this video, you're gonna have your own version of a price tracker that is going to collect data from Amazon. It's going to search and display a search results with all the items that you're looking for. It's going to also allow you to track price changes for a specific item and allow you to subscribe and get notifications when that price drops. So how are we gonna build this application? For the tech stack, obviously, I chose React Native Expo and Expo router for the mobile application. This will allow me to build a cross-platform application for both iOS, Android, and potentially even deploy it on web as well. For the backend, I chose Supabase because it covers everything from authentication, storage, database, and API. And what I love about it is it's built on top of Postgres, and Postgres is super powerful. It's open source and allows us to do some really powerful mechanisms that we're gonna cover today, such as automatic triggers and a lot more that we're gonna do in a second. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. How do we get the data? How are we gonna get the data from Amazon? Because if we go ahead and search Amazon Price API, you're not gonna find anything because Amazon doesn't want you to build things like that. That leads us to obviously data scraping, because whenever we cannot access the data through an API or a data collection, what we can do is we can write a script that would go ahead, open pages, send requests, get information, and take only the information that we need and store it somewhere that we can use later. This process is called data scraping. It's widely used on the internet to gain access to data. And I remember that I've been using Selenium with Python like years ago to also play and learn about data scraping. So I tried to build a script with that. I ran it and everything worked fine. I got some data, I got like the page, I could parse it with some additional tools. But after a couple of requests, I get into this. I get into CAPTCHAs, or if you're lucky, you get CAPTCHAs. If not, you actually can get banned on your IP address because sites like Amazon and all of these big players, they don't really like being scraped. So they are implementing a lot of measures against web scraping. For example, as simple as if you're sending multiple requests from the same IP, it's obvious that you are doing some scraping. So they might block you or show you a CAPTCHA to solve. So doing it in a simple way from my local machine didn't work. We need a better solution. That's when I remember that there is a solution like BrightData. And with BrightData, we can build these scalable scrapers and get data that we need from anywhere on the internet. Because BrightData is the cloud-based solution for getting and unlocking any public web data that you might need. It's built on an award-winning proxy networks of over 78 million residential IP addresses, which will make sure that every request that you're sending is sent from a different IP address. That's improving your credibility and avoids being blocked by CAPTCHAs and so on. They also have tools to get around CAPTCHAs, and with a scraping browser, you get this access through the tools that you already know. For example, you can use Selenium and connect to this scraping browser, and then the scraping browser will take care of CAPTCHAs, will take care of everything for browser, handling cookies, and you, on the other hand, are going to focus on only getting the data that you need. So I was thinking maybe I should use the scraping browser, but then I saw that they have a new tool. And the tool is called Web Scraper APIs. Basically, what this tool is doing is BrightData went ahead and created a lot of scrapers that are presented to us in form of an API. For example, we send a simple request, BrightData will take care of scraping the data for us and giving us the data in a clean way so that we don't have to worry about making sure that our scraper is always up to date, which is the biggest challenge of building a scraper. Why? Because all of these websites are always changing the structure, so you should always keep up to date with that to update your scraper. But with this API, you don't have to worry about that, and we're gonna use the Amazon Scraper API to get data from there. In a second, we're gonna go ahead and look at this API and how it looks, but long story short, we're gonna get like all the data like price and titles and description and anything that we might need. BrightData is the sponsor of this video, so thank you very much for sponsoring, and you can actually get $15 in free credits by signing up using our link in the description below. And if you're ready, I think we can get started and build this price tracker because I'm super excited with what we're gonna have at the end of this video. So let's roll the intro and let's get started. All right, so sorry for being a little bit late. I'm still figuring out all my setup here in my new office. I recently moved to Barcelona. Hello everyone who is joining us live. How are you doing, guys? Let me pop up the chat here close to me. I think I'm gonna move it also here. And let's get started. First of all, Alexander, thank you very much for the donation. That's very kind of you. Vadim, thank you very much for your help with the off provider via email. Sorry, can't stay for the live stream. We'll make sure to watch it later. Oh, thank you very much. I helped Alexander with some questions on email these days. So here is a quick demo, which is a prototype of what we're gonna have. We're gonna be able to do a new search. For example, I don't know, what are we gonna buy? An air fryer, right? Because who doesn't like air fryer? We see that this generated a new scraper. The status is new, and in a second is going to start actually scraping. While that is doing, usually takes around 10 seconds for the scraper to perform. We can look at our previous searches. For example, here I searched for a MacBook Pro and I got like different results. I can go ahead and subscribe to price changes, and that would make sure that the scraper is run at intervals of time, for example, every single day, and it will check like these prices to make sure that we are going to have like the best price. For example, here we're gonna see that this item has changed in price multiple times throughout the day, and maybe later we can actually put it into a chart to see it on the graph. Now if I'm gonna go to air fryer, we see that it's scraping and everything is done here. The scraping side is done through the BrightData. If we go here, we can open the API, and under the API logs, I'm gonna see that here I'm running a scraper. And as I said, all the scrapes that we're doing is 10 to 30 seconds, as you can see. And after that is ready, it will automatically update our application. We are subscribing for these updates, and we show these results automatically here. And after that, you can even open it in Amazon, which is the way that I think that this application might also make money, because Amazon has an affiliate program, and you can put your affiliate code on this button, and every time a user will go ahead and open from here and buy something, you're gonna make money. So that's a way to monetize, and I think this application might be a really good business opportunity if you want to pursue it, and you can use this tutorial as a starting point. So here we have it. I believe we're gonna even make it looking better, but before we do that, we actually have to get started. So let me show you first what data we're gonna have to work with. Go ahead and follow the link in the description to create a BrightData account. You're gonna automatically get $15 to on your account so that you can play with web scraper API. It's going to be enough for a lot of scrapes, because if we go to the dashboard and under API, here we're gonna find more than 240 APIs at the moment. Later, probably you're gonna see even more APIs such as Facebook API, LinkedIn, Airbnb, properties info, Amazon, ASOS, BBC News, Balenciaga, and a lot more, Best Buy, and so on. What I'm interested in is I'm gonna go into the e-commerce data, and here we're gonna see Amazon. We're gonna go to amazon.com to scrape data from the amazon.com, and here actually through this we can get not only from .com, from any domain, from Amazon.Germany or India and so on. And under here we're gonna find the Amazon product search collect by URL. So if we go here, we're gonna see the documentation for this API. What we need to send here is we need to send a keyword, we need to send the URL or the domain to which we want to scrape, and the number of pages that we want to scrape. And in the end, we're gonna get the data in the following format. We have ID of a product, we have a URL that you can go ahead and access, and you're gonna see how it looks like. Oh, come on. Access like this. So this is the Apple MacBook. This is the name, if it's sponsored or not, the initial price, the final price, the currency, and all the information like ratings, variations, pages. Like basically it's a lot of info that you can use to improve your application and to build on top. So before we actually look into how we can interact with API, let's go ahead and download a sample by clicking here, but make sure to press JSON. And let's go ahead and download this sample. This is going to download a JSON file with some data that we're gonna use in a moment to build the user interface of our application. And the next step is going to be to go ahead and initialize a new project. Let me go ahead and do projects. Not Academy, I've been working on the React Native Mastery, which is coming soon, but let's go on YouTube. And this is... While we're here, let's go ahead and initialize a new Expo project. For that, I'm gonna use the tool Create Expo Stack, because Create Expo Stack will allow me to create Expo Stack at latest. This tool is a simple tool that allows us to create and set up projects with some predefined templates and predefined libraries. Let's give it a name. The name is going to be Amazon Price Tracker. Let's use TypeScript. Let's use NPM or any other package manager. And here, scroll down to select Expo Router, and here scroll down to select tabs. This is going to be a template that is going to have the bottom tab navigation. And what I like here is that we can choose from multiple styling libraries. More recently, I started using Native Wind, and I'm gonna select Native Wind for this project, which I'm gonna talk a bit later, but in a couple of words, allows you to use Tailwind classes to style React Native components. So instead of writing styles, we are writing simple names of classes like utility classes, For example, you just write rounded and you're gonna get like border radius and round corners for an element. It's going to be super easy to style with it, but we're gonna talk about it a bit later. Now for the authentication, I'm gonna choose Supabase, which will have some Supabase configuration. Let's choose no for EIS, no for this, and it's going to go ahead and install the dependencies of this project. Hey, Mr. Frank, this is awesome. Price tracking application, Vadim. Thank you very much for the donation. That's super nice of you. How are you doing? Long time no see. I remember you on our channel like years ago. Hello, Niwaz. Hello, Kwang. Hello, Samix. Hi, Rogelio. How are you doing? React Native 2024. Hello. Alexander. Hello. ¿Cómo estás? Estoy bien. ¿Y tú? Yash. Mike. Daniel. Hello. Trev. So here we have our application is ready. What I'm gonna do is open it in Visual Studio Code by writing code and then the name of the folder, Amazon Price Tracker, and this will open Visual Studio Code. I recently gave Cursor a try, and to be honest, I'm pretty impressed. Like it is helping me build this application quite fast because nowadays I'm building, I don't know, 3 or 4 applications every single week and I need to move super fast. And I've been trying it, and yeah, the power of AI is really nice. But I wanted to not use it in the video in order to write everything and explain as we go so that anyone can follow along and build this application yourself. Now that we have our application open, and before we jump into the files, let's go ahead and open a terminal and start the development server by running npm start. Open a terminal, you can do that from the top, new terminal. And here, we are going to press, this is the development server of Expo and how you're going to interact with it through this terminal. Anytime that you need to go back to this menu, you can press C and it's going to clear everything and bring back the menu. If this is the first time, I'm explaining it in a couple of words, like how to do it. If you know it, that's good. The easiest way to run this application is going to be to download the Expo Go application on your iOS or Android device and then scan this QR code and you're going to have the application running directly on your device. If you have an iOS simulator or Android emulator, this process requires that you have either Xcode or Android Studio. In that case, you can press A or I and it's going to run directly on your machine. These are 2 options. One is super easy, you don't need anything except from Node, and the other one will allow you to use the simulator. And as we can see, after our application is running, that's our starting point. We have 2 tabs, tab 1 and tab 2, and these screens live in the app directory. The app directory is the specific directory from Expo Router. And Expo Router, being a file-based navigation system, will look into this directory, and for all the files and folders, it will create and set up screens. For example, in our tabs directory, we have the index screen, which is the tab 1. And if I say here, I don't know, search, we're going to see at the top search. And the 2, which is our tab 2. And we can go ahead, and if we change title to, I don't know, price alerts, it's going to change at the top price alerts and at the bottom also price alerts. Perfect. So that's where we're gonna work most of the time. And as we go, I'm gonna explain some more features of Expo Router when we need like additional screens. Hey Shoaib, how are you doing? For now, what I want to do is I want to bring in the dummy data that we downloaded from BrightData from API. I'm gonna go back to Amazon e-commerce, Amazon, Amazon.com, and the name is Amazon Products Search. So if you search here Amazon products search, here you're gonna find the API. Go ahead and choose JSON and download the sample. And after you have this file, I'm gonna go ahead and let's bring it somewhere in our application. I'm going to bring it from the downloads folder. I'm gonna bring it maybe in the assets. It doesn't matter because this is temporary. In a second, we're gonna do this thing from the API, like we're gonna actually scrape this data. We need it only to build some user interface so we have something to work with. Let's rename this file from assets that we just imported as search.json. And as you can see, this is a super long file with, I think, 1,000 items, 1,000 search products. So let's go ahead and start seeing how we're gonna render them. If we look in our guide, we saw that on the search details page, like after we perform a search, we're gonna display a list of these items. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna start on the index. On the index page, I want to add, I will delete the view container from here because I simply want to add a text input imported from React Native. And this text input, imported from React Native, I can remove this one, will be displayed somewhere here on the first page. And if I add here a placeholder search for a product, it's going to be there at the top. Now, what I want to do is I want to style it a bit. And the way we're going to style it is not going to be through the style sheet as you are probably used to if you have experience with React Native. The way we're going to do that is through class name property. And here we're going to send utility class names that from Tailwind, and with the help of native wind, we're going to style it. For example, if you do BG white or maybe red so that you can see, that utility class, what it's going to do is it's going to set the background color, BG red 500, is going to set the background color to this text input to red. If you do, for example, margin, which is M3, for example, it's going to add some margin. If you go ahead and do padding 3, it's going to add padding inside it, padding 3. If you add rounded small, it's going to round the corners. You can do even MD for medium or large or XL or 2XL, for example. As you can see, it works like this. So if you have experience with Tailwind, for you, this is going to make perfect sense and you're going to feel at home. If you don't, it takes a bit of time to learn it. And where you will look for the learning resources is by going to tailwindcss.com, and here for the search for something that you need. For example, if I need border, I'm going to search border. Here we're going to see utility classes to control the width of an element's border. If I just write border, it's going to apply border width 1. Let's try it here. Let's do border, and we see that the item has border. If I'm going to do border /color or /gray 300, that's going to apply color to that border. And so every time that you need, go ahead on Tailwind CSS and search something here. For example, border color. That's going to show you the different colors that you can apply. We are using native wind here, but it allows us to use Tailwind classes. So probably everything from Tailwind is gonna work here. Maybe there are some edge cases that is not gonna work, but 95% of classes and styles are going to work in React Native. And another utility to get suggestions like I have, for example, border spacing and so on, that you need is an extension for Tailwind. On VS Code, search Tailwind, and I think this is what I have installed. The Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, and it's going to give you all the options. Auto recommend, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. As you're gonna get used to this, it's going to make a lot of sense, and you're gonna see how fast you can prototype and build user interfaces. Perfect. Now that we have a little bit of knowledge about native wind, that's what we're gonna use, and we're gonna practice so I can safely delete the styles from here. I can delete the style sheet, I no longer need it, and I can go ahead and continue our application, because after the text input, I want to add a button. So for the button, maybe I'm gonna do a pressable, and inside the pressable a text, and the text will be search. Let's import search here, text from React Native. We're gonna see the button. A pressable component is a simple view that has on-press events. On-press events, let's do let's call a function here called const perform search. And this function, we're going to see later what it's going to do. Now it's going to simply do a console warn search. And I'm going to do perform search when we press on this button. If we press, we see at the bottom the console warn. Perfect. Let's go ahead and give some styles using also class names. For example, BG, I'm going to choose a color. Now is going to be the time when we select the color that we're going to use. Should we go with something orange? I don't know. Or teal. Let's go with a teal. Looks nice. I don't know. So this is the background of the button. I'm also going to give padding 3. And maybe rounded as well. Rounded. When I save, it automatically changes the order of these items. I think it sorts them, or maybe not. It has a rule of how to properly align them. But yeah, if something jumps, just look, it simply realigns them. I mean the class names. Another thing that I want to do is I want the text input and the button to be on the same row. So for that, I'm going to put them inside a view, inside a common container. And by setting to the common container flex row, this is going to add flex direction row to the container. And we're going to have both the text input and the pressable on the same row. Now I'm going to remove a margin 3 from the text input. I'm going to say that the text input is flex1 because I want the text input to take all the available space on that screen. And through the parent component, through the parent view, using a gap property, I will adjust how much space between the two items should be. For example, gap 3. And with a padding on the parent container also 3, we can add some spacings around. Okay, perfect, that's good. Should we do background color white to this search input? Yeah, let's try. Perfect. Now what I want to do is, how do we know what is the user typing here? Well, for that we need a state variable. We need to bind a state variable to be able to track the value of our text input. So let's call it query, set query. Maybe not query, like search. set search, and we define a state using the hook useState, and here we define the initial value, which is going to be an empty string. The state is going to be imported from React, and we have to send, this is the value of a state, which will be assigned to the value of our text input. And whatever we have in the state here is going to be displayed in the text input. But we also need to update our state variable whenever the text input value changes. And we do that by sending here on change text property of a text input. And we say whenever you change the text, update the state value. So now if I change something, it updates and we have access to it through our state variable. And whenever we press the button, we can say search, and here we can do what are we searching for. So now if I'm going to search for MacBook and press search, we're going to see here search MacBook. Perfect. A bit later, we're going to save the search in database, and then we're going to start scrape Amazon for this query. But for now, we still focus on the UI. So let's simply go ahead and redirect to another page that is going to display the results of the search. So I want to render the results of a search in a separate page because the search is something that we will save in the database. I don't want to do the search and scrape data and then forget about it, because scraping costs money and takes time. I want to save the data so that you can later access it easier by getting it from the database instead of doing the scrape again. So for that reason, we're gonna create a separate page that will be responsible for rendering the search results, the details that have been scraped about a specific search. So we're gonna do that, but before I do that, let me actually go ahead and do a git add, git commit. That's gonna be init project and search box. All right, now let's go ahead and create a new, as I said, a new screen for our search result. I'm going to actually define and create a new folder called search. And inside search, I'm going to keep all the features related to a search. And the first one is the main page of a search. And I'm going to call it index.tsx. So by simply creating folders and files in Expo Router and exporting, export default function, search screen, search result screen, let's call it like this. And by simply displaying here, let's say a text, search results, let's go ahead and import text from React Native. And I can do here class name. Is it text XL? Yeah, 5XL will just make it bigger. Now by simply creating this file here and exporting a function, we already have a screen. And we have a screen because Expo Router will parse all of our files and will create and define these screens for us. And we can see that by, if we would run it on the web, we can simply change the URL to the /search because that's the name of our directory. In our case, when we press on the button and after we create the search, I want to redirect to this page. I can do that by simply calling router, imported from Expo Router, .push, and we want to push to a new URL. The URL is going to be / and then it will follow the structure of our folders and files. For example, the folder that we want to go into is the search. So /search. And if we don't give anything more, it's going to try to go to search index, because index is the first file it will take. If we would have multiple files there, you can do here search result, search new, and so on. But for now, /search is what we need. And if I press here, we see a whoopsie, but if I reload and then do again, we see search results. And from here, we can go back to create a new search. Perfect. Sunday, we don't have a guide, we have a task list. And the task list is quite huge. Where is it? So now we are at the create project of the search bar. And now we are at the search result page. That's our process. And later we're going to go into the backend, searches, and so on. Mr. Frank is asking, we can hopefully we can do Devember again. It was such a great experience learning new things and helping out nonprofit at the same time. Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I was thinking about what to do this December. I'm still figuring it out. I have actually two ideas. It's either we are going to go ahead and do something similar to previous year, where every day I'm going to create some educational content, like every day a new tutorial, or I would go ahead and build some real products, some real application live. Like not as a tutorial, but just go live, build something and launch it, and maybe take like 3 or 4 projects and every week do something new. So like an indie hacking journey. What would you be more interested in? Let me know. Let's start a poll. Yes, let's go ahead and start a poll. I'm really curious to know what you would be more interested. Okay, so let's continue. Now that we are here on this page, let's focus on the search result. The search result is going to be the page that, if we look here, is going to render a list of products. The products, we already have data about them, so we can already work with these products. If we look into the assets, search, this is going to be the products. They are a lot. They are thousands, but this is an array of products. So let's go ahead in our application search index and import products from home screen. Then we have assets, or no? Let's do like this. It should work, right? Assets, yes. Then search. I'm actually gonna do dummy products. I'm gonna call them because they're dummy. And let's go ahead and take only the first, I don't know, 20 products. It's going to probably work better. I'm gonna do that with slice or splice. I never know what's the right one. So slice is probably the one that I'm interested in. Section of array, yes. So now that we have these products, I can go ahead and do a console log products. We should see that, yes, they are an array of product information. What we need to do is we need to render them on the screen inside a list, inside a scrollable list. So let me go ahead and leave this text maybe as the title or something like that. but render here a view for the whole page. I'm gonna close the view here. Let's import this view from React Native. And I'm gonna press search to be on this page. I don't need 5XL. And to render a list of items, we have a component called flat list in React Native. So let's go ahead and render a flat list and see how we are working with it. Flat list has two required properties. It has the data property, which should be an array of things that we want to render. For example, in our case, that's products. This is the array of data. Now it also has render item. The render item is the way that we tell flat list how it should render every single item from that array. For example, we can tell here that, hey, for every item, go ahead and render a view. And inside that view, oh, come on, view. And inside that view, a text with word product. And if I go there, we should see already 20 lines of the word product. But we want to actually render the product name. We can take access to the item that it's currently rendering by destructuring here as item. Now if I say product and then maybe not even product, but item dot, and let's see how is the data structured. I think it's item dot name. So let's do item dot name. We're gonna see already a lot of names. It doesn't look very clean, but we can give this flat list a content container class name, which is the way for us to style the container rendered around all our items. So by giving their gap 10, we're gonna have spaces around the container. We can also give padding 3, and let's do background white, or the background white we're gonna give to actual to the containers of our items, bg white. In this way, we're gonna see the differences. Let's also give some padding 3. Okay, that's better. And we see 20 products with their titles. They're coming from a dummy data and we render them on the screen. Perfect. Maybe it doesn't need gap 10. I just showed you how to use it, but gap 3 or even gap 2 is going to be enough. And padding 2. Yeah, that's better. Okay, what do we need to render on this screen? Well, we need the title in the center, on the left the image, and on the right the price. So for the image, we're gonna use an image component, image. And this image component is imported from React Native as well. The image can render local and remote images, and to render a remote image, we send here a source with an object that has the URI. Where do we take the URI? Also from the data, because the data will have, if we scroll, it will have image property with a link to the image of this product. Let's go ahead and say item.image. And if I go to the search page, we do not see it, but that's something usual with images, because for an image, we always have to give it some size. For example, width 24 and height 24 will give it some width and height. If we hover over these classes, having the Tailwind package, we're gonna see that the age 24 and width 24, that's around 96 pixels. And that looks okay, that looks nice. I'll just go ahead and put the image and the text on the same row by saying that the parent has a flex row component. That's good. And in order for the text not to go overboard, like over the screen, it needs to say flex1, basically say take all the available space, but don't take more than that. So that will move the text back and make sure that it's aligned. Again, on the parent component, we can use a gap property to adjust the spacings between the columns. That's good. And the name, as you can see, can be super long. So I'm going to go ahead and say that name will cut at 3 lines. So it's going to be maximum 3 lines, maybe 4, because it can fit 4. Yeah, I think that's good. Is the images too large? There is no width 20. There is width 20. Let's go height 20, width 20. Yeah, I think that's better. Perfect. We have a text, not 4 lines, and we have an image. Lastly, on the right, we want to render the price. That's also going to come from the data that we scrape from Amazon. Let's put a $sign here, and we're gonna put item dot final price, I think. If we look here, there is initial price and final price. This is based on discounts, I think, that they are offering. It's not about keeping track of the price. This is the actual price. Or it takes into consideration, yeah, maybe takes into consideration the shipping as well. So this is our search results. Perfect. We have some UI to work with. And I don't know, if you do not slice it, it's going to have a lot of items that you can scroll through. As you can see, all of them are fresh, coming from Amazon, scraped recently using BrightData. And yes, here we have it. What also we can do here is whenever I press on this item, I want to go ahead and open the URL on the Amazon for that item. To do that, I need to handle press events on the item itself. So from a view that renders one item, I'm going to change to a pressable. Pressable, imported from React Native. Now we can do on press, we will know console. Warren, we will know the URL of the item, and I will console warn it for now. So if I press here, we see an Amazon URL. If I press here, it's another Amazon URL. We just simply have to redirect there. To do that, we can use the linking module from React Native .open URL, and here item.url. The linking module is imported from React Native and helps us with linking functionalities. And now if I'm going to press on one of these items, it's going to redirect to Amazon and open this item there. And we can start buying it. Perfect. Exactly what we needed. So our application is shaping up. And let me go ahead and commit this. Or let's double check if everything is good here so far in the search. You know what? I think it might be a problem. Around the key, or how React will optimize the long list. Usually a flat list, if your data have IDs, it will automatically assign that as a key, and it will optimize the list based on that key. But in this case, we do not have an ID. We have an ASIN, or this is the unique ID of a product. So what we need to do is we need to specify after we render the item inside the flat list, or even before, like as a property, a key extractor function. So basically, having an item, how do we want to calculate the key? Well, take the async from the item and use that as a key. And now it should work. I'm not sure like why I didn't have a warning before, but this way it should definitely work because we are taking the async of the item as the key for our rendered components inside the long list. So with that being said, I can go ahead and do git add, git commit, product results page UI. Perfect. So how's it going, guys? Everything good so far? Rogelio, how are you? George, hi buddy, I'm new here. Just want to ask, creating Expo project from scratch and republish it to the existing project in Google Play and App Store. Does ratings and comments of the user will remove? I think if you will target the same project with the same package name, with the same encryption keys, it's going to remain the same. Alexei, please make a record of this tutorial. Thank you. Yes, all our tutorials are living on our channel. You can go back, watch them at any time, and follow them at your own pace. Hello, Mirk. How are you doing? Raining Amsterdam. Yes, I know. Amsterdam is usually like that. And what was our results? How do we do this? And poll. What do you want to see? Where is it? So yes, 68% of you wants to see me building real project like indie hacking documentary, right? Okay, that's nice because that's what I would also love to do. We'll see how to do it better. Hello, Abhishek. How are you doing? So what's our plan? We have the setup for the front end. It's kind of good. We're gonna come back and improve it later as we need. But what I want to do now is focus on the backend. I want to set up the backend of our application so that we can already start storing information in the database, then scraping it using BrightData, caching it in the database, integrating it in our application, also allowing users to create an account, sign up, and so on. So for the backend, we're gonna use Supabase. Let's go ahead on Supabase and let's go ahead and create an account if you don't have one already, and let's create a new project. I'm gonna choose my organization, and for the project name, I'm gonna say Amazon Price Tracker. Leave everything as it is, type in a database password, copy it, and store it somewhere, but if you forget it, I'm gonna show you how to reset it and then create a new project. That will automatically set up your project on Supabase, and this will give you a lot of things by default. It will have automatically a database, a Postgres database, and it will also have like authentication that we can already integrate with to create users here in the authentication that will be stored in the database and so on. Later on, we're also going to use the edge functions to write some, for example, an edge function that will be run every single day that will fetch data or scrape data from Amazon using BrightData. And that edge function will be scheduled to run every single day or at every hour of a day. So now that we have a project here, we can go ahead and start using it. Our template, if we look in package.json, should already have the Supabase client, the Supabase GS client. It has this package, and if we look into the utils, it also has the code that allows us to create a client, to initialize a Supabase client using our credentials. The credentials is taken from the environment variables called Expo Supabase URL and Supabase unknown key. Let's go ahead and open this environment file, and here we have them. If you don't have these files, you'll have to, if you didn't start with the same template as I did, you have to simply install Supabase.js package, then create a utility function that will call create client with your Supabase URL and the anonymous key. You can look at this code, and I'm taking them from environment variables that I'm gonna provide here in the .env file. We already have these two keys here. Then the value for them, we're gonna go back to Supabase and take them from here, from project settings, from database, actually API, and under API we're gonna first save a URL. Let's copy it and paste it under Supabase URL. And if we scroll under project API keys, we have two keys. The public one, or also called anonymous, is this one, and you can use it safely in browsers or in any client-side code. And we're gonna copy it and use it in our case. There is also this service role or secret key, and this one you should never use it in server on client side, because using this key will bypass any security levels that you put there. So this is only meant to be used like server to server or from secure environments. Now that we have this configuration, we can easily go ahead and I'm also going to say that, hey, Supabase URL is going to be process environment, or if it's missing, it's going to be empty string, just to make sure that TypeScript is happy. And Supabase has a proper type here. Now we can import the Supabase client and start using it. For that, I'm going to start by allowing users to create an account in our application. Let's go ahead in our app folder and create a new folder called auth. Here in the auth, I'm going to create a login.tsx, and let's do export default function login screen, and let's return a view from React Native with a text, sign up or sign in, something like that. The text should also be from React Native. How do we get there? Well, at this moment, I will simply create a link that will redirect me to the login screen. And I'm going to do that by going into the tabs, index, and somewhere here, maybe after our header there, let me create a link imported from Expo router saying open off screen. And this link expects an href, which is the URL that we want to redirect to. So if I redirect to off login, by pressing on this text on my screen, it's going to automatically redirect me to the authentication screen after I reload it. So now I see sign in at the top. Let's go ahead. This link, by the way, was imported also from Expo router. Now I'm going to focus on some user interface for our login screen, and then we're going to focus on the functionality. So what do we need on this screen? We need some text input from React Native for email and password. Placeholder, let's do email. We need one text input with a placeholder password. And we need some buttons. I'm gonna do that with a pressable and with a text I'm gonna do two buttons. Both sign up and sign in is going to be done through here. So let's do sign up and sign in. Or the sign up will be create, or let's leave sign up for creating an account. Now let's style this one a bit. Where do we start? Well, I'm gonna jump around, but I'm gonna start on the container of a page. So this container will have, first of all, some padding, definitely some padding free, and some gaps between the components on the screen. 5 is too much, so I'm gonna do gap free. Nice. The title, I don't even think we need a title. But yeah, I don't need a title. I'm gonna keep it simple. Let's go ahead on the inputs. Let's give it a class name. And I can steal the class names from our tabs, from this search box. So let me copy the text input class name here and bring it to my first email text input and my second password. And if I go there, we have something here. Padding free is not enough. I'm gonna do py, which will apply padding on the y-axis, like top and bottom, and I'm gonna do 5. I will do padding 5, and on the y-axis 7. Do we have a 7? Or just 5 is going to be enough. Yeah, that's good. For the buttons, should I also copy it from this pressable? Let's do it. I'm gonna copy class name from here, put it on this button and on this button. I'll also put the buttons in the same row by grouping them together with a view and saying that, hey, this view has flex row, and we'll put them in the same row. And with a flex 1 on both of them, they will share the available space between them, taking half and half. And with a gap property on the parent component, we're gonna specify the sizing there. And maybe with a justify center, not justify center, but item center, items center, we're gonna align the text in the middle. And on the text side, you can do font bold and color should be simply white. White. Let's do the same class name here for the sign up, and we probably are good here. If you want to change the title of this page, we can easily do that by rendering in this screen a stack.screen and by sending here options. For example, title should be sign in. Perfect. I think we need them bigger. Well, what's happening there? Something weird happening there. Border, background white. Here everything is okay, but here if we type something it doesn't happen. Maybe because we do not have a state. So let's add the state for our email. Const email and set email equal use state and the password and set password use state. Now the email is going to go into the value email, and the on change text, we're gonna update the email using the setter. and we do the same for the password. Value equal password, and on change text is set password. Now we can type things. Still something super weird happening there. I'm gonna try to say that the color of a text here should be black. Maybe the color or the padding is the problem. I think the padding is the problem, you know, or maybe flex 1. Flex 1? Yes, flex 1 was the problem. So in this scenario, we don't need flex 1. And padding 5 looks good. And for email, I can do the dim at notjust.dev. And for the password, I can type as password, but I would prefer the password to be secure text entry in order to hide the values. Okay, now what should happen when we press sign in or sign up? We should call some functions on sign in and const on sign up. Let's go ahead and give this on sign in to the first pressable. On press, we're gonna call on sign in, and here on press, we're gonna call on sign up. Now, the last step is to implement the logic here. And the logic of signing in and signing up is going to be done using Supabase. So let's first import our Supabase client, Supabase, from utils Supabase. Remember, in the utils Supabase, we created this client. Now what I can do is I'll start with sign up. I can go ahead and say, hey, Supabase, I want to access the auth and I want to sign up. Sign up. The sign up expects the credentials, and the credentials will be email and password. The two fields, email and password. Because we are awaiting, this function should be async. And most of the Supabase calls will return us an object with two fields, with multiple fields, but what we are interested in is in the data and the error. Data and error. And using these properties that we get back, we can check if there was an error. Let's go ahead and use a native alert from React Native. And we're going to use alert.alert and notify the user that error creating the account. And let's do error.message. But if there was no error, we can console log that data to see what's happening there. Now if I look here and reload and go to the off screen and try 123 at gmail.com and 123 sign up, we're gonna see error creating the account. Email cannot be used as it is not authorized. It is not authorized. What we have to do is, by default, authentication through emails has you have to confirm your email. You're going to receive an email and then you have to confirm it. As we are still in development, I'm going to go to authentication under Supabase. We're going to go to providers. We're going to go to email. And we're going to disable secure email. We're going to disable the confirm email. And this way, our user will automatically be confirmed without having to go through the email that you receive. And now if I'm going to go ahead and sign up again, let's try to reload. Sign up. Error creating the account cannot be used as it is not authorized. Why is that happening? Off sign up, email, password. Let me double check Supabase. Off. Let's see here in the docs. For the off, sign in with email, sign up, email and password. And for in our case, of sign up, email and password. And we get the error. Let's go ahead and console log the error to see what's going on there. If I do sign up again, Supabase is doing something with emails. So let's check if it's not something new. Supabase. 11 hours ago, as you can see. 12 hours ago. You need to set up a custom SMTP server to get the emails. But at this moment, we don't need the confirmation emails. Okay, I don't need the confirmation email. That's the problem, because we are fighting with not authorized. Email template, email restrictions. You are using built-in email server. The service has limits and it's not meant to use for production application. Okay. So I can only sign up with my email from the organization. And my email for the organization, let's double check that. So because, yeah, as you can see, this is something very new, happened like these days. And they're fighting email abuse. 26th of September, that's actually yesterday. So they restrict in development only emails from your organization to be used. In production, you just simply set up a custom SMTP server so that the emails like confirmation for authentication and so on are going to be sent from your domain. And that's actually how it's happening in production. But for now, let me double check my email from my organization. I think I know what it should be, but I'll just double check that. Organization, team. Account. Okay, I see my email. Let's double check the authentications once again with my email. So I'm gonna use my email that I used to sign up on Supabase. And if I press sign up, now we have the session with the access token, with everything about the user. And if I'll go ahead under authentication, we're gonna see that, hey, we have a new user. All right, that's good. And this user is going to be in our database. You can go to table editor. Under the schema, there is auth, and there is user table with all the information about that user. Perfect. Now we can do the same for the sign in. For the sign in, we can say this is also going to be an async function, and we're going to say await Supabase dot auth dot sign in with password. And here for credentials, I'm going to also give email and password. And we're going to take back the data and error equal. Now we can do the same if error, basically console log this. Otherwise, you just simply sign in. For example, if I'm going to try now to press sign in, we're going to see that we should see an error that we have already one user signed in. On sign in. Oh yeah, but it worked. Like if I'm gonna change something here, like 1, 2, 3 sign in, it says credentials, the account invalid, login credentials. So now we can create an account, we can sign in. The last step is to manage a bit the automated way of handling like redirections. Like if you are authenticated, go to the home screen, otherwise go to the main screen, to the off screen. I'm trying to think about a very easy solution to do that without having like a context. And I think the way we're gonna do it is, well, first of all, here, let's say when we sign in, if there is no error, that means that everything worked correctly. So let's simply go ahead and do router dot push, and we're gonna redirect to the home screen. So if I do sign in now, I'm redirected here. I'm gonna do the same here. If there is no error after the sign up, I will redirect to the home screen. Now, from the root layout here, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to check if a user is signed in or not when we open the application. And based on that, I'm going to redirect him to the right page. Let's go ahead and do that by taking information about the user, using the, where is it? Using the Supabase session. Where is the session? Here, session. Of get session. So on the layout, I'm gonna say, hey, I'll keep track of a session. Use state is going to be null. And let's do use effect. In a use effect, when we mount our component, and mind that we are in the root layout, that means that this use effect is going to run when we launch the application. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, hey, using Supabase client, supabase.auth.get session, we're going to get the session, and then we're going to get the, how is it called? The data of the session. So then we get the data, and inside the data we're gonna have a session, and we're gonna simply set it in state. So now if I am going to do a console log here session, and I'm gonna look here, If I reload the application, we're going to see initially the session is null, but after that we get information such as access token and so on. This is information crucial for us because with this information we're going to be able to redirect the user where he has to be. Where are we going to do that redirection? This is the route layout, and here we cannot do that at this moment. I wanted it simpler without a context provider, but I think the right way is to actually use a context provider. Because, yeah. Well, if we don't have a context provider, now guys, I'll not take shortcuts. I wanted to take a small shortcut, but I'm gonna show you how to properly do it, because taking a shortcut is not gonna be good if you want to build it for production. What we need to do is we need to keep this information somewhere globally, because we're gonna need it in a couple of places to implement the gatekeeping. We would want to gatekeep some of our screens in our application based on whether the user is authenticated or not. So for that reason, I'm gonna go ahead and create a new folder in the root of our application called contexts. Where is it? New folder. Come on. Not there. Come on. Yeah, that's... Let's call it contexts, and let's move it at the root. In this context, let's create the folder called auth-context.tsx. What do we need here is to create our authentication context. This is where we're gonna store and with which we are gonna export information about whether the user is authenticated or not. Let's go ahead and define and export the default component called auth-context-provider. This one is going to be responsible for rendering the provider and keeping track of a state of our context. So let's render auth-context.provider and send here value. What we're gonna do is inside here, we're gonna render all the children components that we are going to wrap around our component of context provider. So let's take the children and let's render them here inside the context provider. The properties can be typed with props with children, and now it's gonna work properly. Value can be empty object for now. Now I'm going to go ahead, and usually when I have a context, I also like to export a custom hook called useOf, for example, in this case, that is going to simply wrap the use context hook from React by using this context that we need. So whenever we need access to this data that we are going to export here, we're going to use the hook useOf. Now let's go ahead and wrap this auth-context provider inside our root layout around our stack. So let's do auth-context provider. I'm going to close it at the end. And this tag with all the screens in our application will become the children of our off-context provider, meaning that they will be rendered inside our provider and will have access to these values. So now we're gonna keep track of our session data on this level. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these lines of code, basically similar to what we did a couple of seconds ago, where we store the session in a state variable, and when we mount the component, we are fetching it, but besides fetching it, we are also subscribing to authentication changes, as you can see here. Now we're going to take that session and export it through the value of our context. Additionally, we can also do user is going to be session $.user, and that's going to be information about the user. Now that we have this in place, what we can do is we can go ahead from the layout. We no longer need this state, so I'm going to delete it safely. But at the tabs layer, we're going to go into the layout and we want to say that, hey, I want to protect this tabs layout. I want to protect all the screens from this folder. And to do that, to protect all the screens from one folder, we do that through the layout component, because the layout is the first component that is rendered. So here, before rendering the actual tabs, I will check if the user is authenticated or not by taking the user using the use session. Not use session, but use of hook imported from our context of context that we just defined. And I'm going to say here, if there is no user, what you should do is return a redirect component, return a redirect action to go to the login screen. So go to off login. And now nothing is going to happen, but if on the index file, I'm going to have pressable here, or let's have a simple text sign out with on press event that will call Supabase .off.sign out. And if I'm going to press sign out from this page, I'm automatically redirected to the sign in screen. And if I reload, I'll automatically be redirected here, because what's happening is it tries to go on the tabs. It sees that the user is not authenticated yet, and it redirects to the authentication. Now, from the authentication, usually we do not need to redirect manually through router.push. Usually, what we need to do is also create a layout file. Export default function of layout. We're gonna return here. Let's return a slot, and a slot is a very simple way of saying, hey, just render the screen without any additional navigator. I'm gonna do it like this. Will it work? Yes, it still works. But here, I can take the user from state, from the use of provider, and I can say if user is defined, if there is a user, then you don't have to be on the authentication screens. So go ahead and return a redirect towards the href / or the home screen. So now, if I'm gonna go ahead and sign in with my account, sign in, we're automatically redirected, even though in the sign in function we never redirected, because we did that through here for the layout. And if I'm gonna reload, we're automatically on this screen. And to avoid the flicker, and that's what Alexander from chat was asking me on email, you see there is a flicker at the beginning. To avoid that flicker, what we need to do is we need to wait a little bit before rendering this one, wait until we know if a user is authenticated or not. And we can do that by having in the auth context provider, a variable is ready, set is ready. This variable is going to be initialized with false. We are not ready yet. When we get the data, when we get the session, we're gonna set ready to true because we know if it's authenticated or not. And if we are not ready yet, just return an activity indicator, or you can return null here, and that will avoid rendering anything until it knows if it's authenticated or not. And then there is no flicker. It automatically goes to the screen that we need, for example, on this tab. And even if I try to go on the authentication by pressing open off screen, it doesn't go. It's handled automatically for us. So from the index here, from the tabs index, I can delete the link open off screen, and the sign out, maybe we can move it on the model, right? I don't know. Yeah, let's do here. Just text sign out from React Native and import Supabase. And finally, what we usually do is we group together all the screens that we need to protect with authentication, because now we did that on the tabs layout. We did this if user is not authenticated, redirect. But we have another folder search, and on the search is not gonna work. So that means that on the search, the user will be able to get there without being authenticated. So that's why usually we create a new folder here. Let's call it up, which a bit repeats the name up from our folder, but is going to be the authenticated part. So I can put tabs there, move, I can put the search there. So everything that should be available only to authenticated users. So it put mostly everything except, like, for example, onboarding screens. Where is the model? I move the model should be in the application here. And from the root layout here, I think we're gonna have to adjust a little bit how we import components. For example, from the tabs, we're gonna import the components like this with a relative path. This is in the tabs layout. Let's check the other files if everything is okay here. Tab 2 in the search is okay. Model looks good. Layout. Yeah, here we need to say in the root layout, in the app layout, we need app/tabs, and here app/model. And now if I press sign out, I should be redirected to the authentication. Perfect. So now we have full authentication implemented. We can create accounts, we can sign in, we can manage, we can sign back out, and we are protecting the important screens from unauthenticated users. Nice. All right, so that was our authentication. Let me go ahead and do a git add, git commit of flow, and everything is good. Have you ever tried Convex in a native application? No, I haven't. I didn't know about the Scrape API. We're gonna find out about that in a second. Like, it's very cool. Okay, so we have authentication ready. Now it's going to be about data, about our database. Give me just 1 second. I come back and we continue. I just need to open the door. All right, it's getting pretty hot here. Let's see. Let's first of all think about how our data is going to be structured, how we're gonna get data, how we're gonna manage everything. Because the data that we're gonna use, like first of all, we're gonna have our application somewhere here. This is our device that is going to render products, right? Product 1, product 2, and so on. This data should come from Amazon. So on the very other end of this graph, we have Amazon. So we have Amazon here. How do we get data from Amazon in our application? As I said, we are going to scrape this data. So we're going to have like a job here that is going to do the scraping. The actual scraper, we are not going to implement ourselves because we could do that using a tool like Selenium or Puppeteer or other tools, and using BrightData. We could leverage the scraping browser, and using this tool, we can basically integrate with Selenium, Playwright, and Puppeteer, and so on, in order to run our scraping scripts on top of everything that BrightData offers, like proxies, captcha solvers, and so on, so that we can focus on the scraping and not on the infrastructure. And we could do that, but we're not gonna do it. We're gonna use, as I said, the Web Scraper API, which simply stays in front of this scraper, Web Scraper API, which stays in front of the scraper and handles all of this data for us. Like, we're not gonna do it. It's going to be done behind the scenes, and for us, it's going to be available through the Web Scraper API. And all of this is our BrightData. Where is it? Come on. Now, whenever the user launches the application, we could go ahead from our application and call this web scraper and get the data and use the web scraper to scrape Amazon and to get the data displayed here. The problem with this approach is that every time we're gonna try to do a search is going to do this scraping. And another problem is that to access an API, you need a secret key. By using the secret key or by calling the API from our front end, that basically means that we're gonna expose our private BrightData API key so that anyone will be able to access it and run scraping jobs for us. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to have our Supabase in front. Here, this is going to be our Supabase stack. And on Supabase, we're going to have an edge function. That edge function is going to call the web scraper API. Now, the cool thing about the edge function is that we can say that, hey, only authenticated users will be able to get here. So there is a authentication layer that is going to be taken into consideration when we invoke these functions. So whenever the user will try to invoke the edge function, it's going to go through the authentication and make sure only users that have an account can invoke edge functions. Now, our private API key for BrightData is going to live on the edge function, so we protect it. And then we can add additional rules in our application saying that, hey, on a free plan, you can only run one scraping job per day. On a paid plan, you can do more. So you can do all of that on the Supabase side. Now, after the web scraper gives us data, we're gonna receive that, you're gonna see a bit later, in another edge function. Start scraping. Finished scraping. So another edge function that is going to be invoked by BrightData whenever the job is finished. So these jobs usually take some time. We saw through the logs that it takes, if we go to API logs, it usually takes like 10 to 30 seconds. And whenever we call, where is my drawing? Whenever we call the web scraper API, we're not going to wait for the response. We're going to call it to start the job and say, hey, BrightData, whenever you're ready, whenever you have data from Amazon, go ahead and send them to this edge function, and I'm going to do something with them. What I'm going to do with them is I'm going to store them in the database. I'm going to store the results in the database. And by storing it into the database, we are basically caching the data so that the next time the user goes into the application, I'm not going to start a new scraping job. If I check the same data, I can go ahead and read it from the database directly without having to go ahead and scrape it again. So that's going to be our whole process. Do you have any questions, guys? If you're watching this live, you have opportunity to ask now questions. And this is how it's going to work. Whenever we initialize, whenever we press this search button, we're going to go ahead and invoke an edge function to start scraping. The edge function will invoke BrightData to say like, hey, please give me this data. BrightData will go ahead on Amazon, will perform the scraping, will get the data, will come back, and will invoke a function that we give it to it. That function is going to write into the database, and from our application, we can subscribe to new updates in the database and get this information inside here and display the result. Make sense? I think it's going to make more sense whenever we actually implement everything. And the first thing that I want to focus on implementing, we have already the authentication, so I can put it as ready. These parts from BrightData, they are ready. We just need to integrate with them. And we need the database. So let's go ahead and work on the database now to set up the tables that we're going to need. We're going to go on Supabase, in the table, under the public schema, we're going to create the tables that we need. One table that we are going to need is going to be a product. And you saw how a product looks in the dummy data. A product has URL, it has name, it has price, and other information that we'll receive from BrightData. But I want to, besides a product, I want to store information about a search, information about a request, a search intent. So if I search here MacBook, I want to store user with ID 1, search for a MacBook. And then all the result is going to link to this search. How do we do that? Well, first of all, let's create this search table. I'm going to call it searches. And we're going to have the following columns. It's going to have the keywords that we search or query. And for the type, we're going to choose a text. And this one is required, so I'm going to deselect is nullable from here to have it required. We can also link it to the user that performed that search by saying user ID. And by pressing here on this link, we can actually link or create a foreign key towards the user under the auth schema. And here we're going to find the users table. And this user ID will point to the users.id. And I'm going to go ahead and press save. So now we are also going to have a user ID to know which user performed that search. What other fields we're going to have? Probably we're going to have a field is tracked to, maybe let's do it like this, is tracked to know, and this is going to be a Boolean. To track, let's also say that this is not nullable. And this is going to be initially false, because if we don't specify if it's tracked or not, it's going to be false. And this way we're going to be able to toggle if we want to track a search or not, if we want to receive updates or not. What else? A search will also have last scraped at, and this is going to be a timestamp. So let's find timestamp Z with time zone, and I can even put it at the top. So we're going to have the date when it was created and also the date when it was the last time we scraped it. So this one can be null, because if we haven't scraped it yet, we're not going to have it there. And maybe we can even add a status. Status such as, is this job new? Is it scraping? Is it ready? Is it waiting to be scraped? I don't know. Let's do it is nullable false, and let's initialize it with new. It's going to be new by default, and it's going to be a text value. And for now, I think we are good in terms of the fields that we need. Let me just double check it. Well, there is one more, but probably we're gonna add it later. But let's add it now. We're gonna have a snapshot ID, and this is how the type of a snapshot ID is going to be a text, and it can be null, so I'm going to leave it like this, and I'm going to press save. This snapshot ID is how we are going to link a job from BrightData web scraper. They have snapshot IDs, and we're going to link it with our search job here in our database. Okay, so we have searches. Another table that we're going to need is the products. The products that have been scraped from the inside a search. So this is in the dummy data, we're going to see what available data types we're going to have. Another place you should look at is under scraping, web scraping. Under API, let's go Amazon search, Amazon product, right? Product. Let's do e-commerce, Amazon.com, and I'm interested in the product search. Here there is a tab called dictionary, and it specifies the columns that we have. For example, asyn is the unique identifier for each product. This is something that we're gonna need, and it's actually going to become our ID. So I'm gonna rename the ID to asyn, and it's going to be of type, where is it? Of type text. So I'm gonna go back, instead of int, I'm gonna say that it's a text. I'm gonna leave created at as it is. Maybe I'm gonna add an updated at, because we're gonna update these informations. So let's do here as well timestamp. And you can initialize also with now, which will put the current date time whenever we create and don't specify the updated at. And later we're gonna just simply update it whenever we have new data. The URL is something that we're gonna get, and that's a text. Let's go ahead and add it here, URL as text. The name, I think that's how it's called, that's a text, is also going to be there. This is the product name. You can look at other fields, like if it's sponsored or not, to filter out. I'm going to take the final price. I'm going to take the minimum amount of data, but you can take more, obviously. Final price is, let's do float, which is a double precision floating point, float 8. Let's do is nullable false, and let's initialize it with 0 if it doesn't have a value, for example. Currency is also very important. It's a text. Final price, currency, ratings, number of ratings, very important, but I don't need them for now. Keywords, image. Image is something that we are using, so let's take as well image. It's a text. Image, and yeah, that's it. And look, here the fill rate also specifies how many data points have data for this thing. For example, the badge, only 6% of them have badges. But URL, all of them will have a badge or a URL. Okay, so now that we are happy with the data that we have here, let's think about additional data that a product in our database needs. For example, a product in our database should be linked with a search, right? So I'm gonna add a search called I'm thinking that a product, if I add here a search ID, that will create a one-to-many relationship between a product and a search, meaning that searches can have multiple products, but a product will belong only to one search. In our case, in fact, a product can belong to multiple searches, Because think about it, we can find this product through different searches. If we can find the iPhone by searching iPhone 13 and so on. So for that reason, I'm going to complicate a little bit our database design, but it's going to be more scalable. It's going to be the right way to grow this project. So I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to just double check if we have everything. Yes, I'm going to save this one, and I'm going to create a new table that is going to help us create the many-to-many relationship between searches and products, because a product can belong to many searches and a search can have multiple products. So for that reason, we're going to have a new table called product search, and this one is going to simply have a search ID that is going to link towards searches ID, and we can even say when the search is updated, go ahead and update this one as well. When the search is deleted, go ahead and delete this one as well with cascade. And I'm gonna add another one towards the product. For example, I will call it asyn, which is the ID of a product, right? So the asyn is going to link to products to also asyn, and also cascade and cascade. Save. Now that's how we're gonna create the links between them. Let's save. Probably we didn't need like create it, but it's okay. All right. Lastly, we need to specify some rules how to authorize our data. Which users are allowed to do what on our database layer. With Supabase, we do that through row-level security policies. For example, on searches, who do we want to allow to add searches here, to insert data? Well, we want any authenticated user to be able to add a search. So under the searches table, I'm going to press on the add RLS, row level security. And here I'm going to create a policy. Let me zoom out. There are some templates, and for example, insert, the template for insert is actually what I need. It allows insert to the authenticated users. So I'm going to click save. Now for the, I'm going to create another one for the select. Who is allowed to read things? I think a search, let's do also authenticated users. I'm going to keep it simple. Search authenticated. And we're going to see about update. Yeah, maybe not now. Let's actually try create policy. There is update for users based on email. So it's going to allow the update on this table by checking the email. The thing is that we do not have an email, so I will get inspiration from the delete column, which works with user ID. I'm going to copy this one from here, line 7. I'm going to move back to update, and I'm going to replace this line and this line with the call. What it's doing here is going to run this condition whenever a user will try to update, and is going to check if user ID from this table matches the ID of the user who is authenticated, who is doing the request. And this user ID should match exactly, if we look in table editor under searches, should be one of these columns, and we have user ID here. So it's only going to allow to update your searches. Let's go ahead and do for products and product search. We're gonna product and product search. Let's do at least under products. Let's give create policy, select read access for all users. Let's allow anyone to read products, and the same for the other table. Select for all users. So product and product searches, anyone can view. Okay, finally, we have set up our table, and it's time to interact with it from our application. The first step is to add a new search in the database. Whenever the user types something here and presses the button, I want to add the search in the database. Let's go ahead in our application, App, Tabs, Index, and this is our home screen. And when we call perform search, I need to save this in the database. To do that, I'll make it an async, and I will do the following. As well, again, whenever we work with Supabase, we are gonna get data and error. Let's call await Supabase dot from, and that's how you specify what table you're working with. And the table name is searches. Let's do insert. And here we need to insert some values. The ID is going to be auto-generated, created at auto-generated, last scraped at auto-generated. Is it last scraped at auto-generated? It's going to be null. The query is what the user is searching. So let's say query is equal to this search variable. The user ID is user ID. We need to provide here the user ID. In whatever field is struct is going to be false by default. Status, let's initialize it with new, but I think that's the default value, so we can simplify it and skip. Status, we can say that the default one is new. Will it work? Yeah, it's going to be default new. And snapshot ID, there is no snapshot ID yet. So these are the two things, which user and what he's trying to search for. How do we get the information from the user? We get it using the use of hook. And using use of hook, we can get access to the user. And here we're gonna say user.id. Now, if I'm going to reload and try to do iPhone and then search, I don't know what's happening. Let's see. All right, we already have data in the database. We have this item with ID 1, the query was iPhone, and the user ID is this one, which belongs to me. Perfect. So that's exactly what we wanted. Here you can do if error, you can console log something, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say if data, then and only then redirect to the search. So now if I do iPhone 1, 2, 3, search, it doesn't go. Because after insert, we need to do dot select if we want to get back the data that was inserted. And maybe even dot single to take only one item, not an array, but one item. So now if I'm gonna do, we are redirected. And we can go ahead and console log with this data. And if we look here, here we're gonna see the actual item that was inserted in the database with its ID and all the other data. Good. What we can do with this data is we can send it to the search table, because on the search screen, we need to know what search are we working with. We can do that by sending here through the URL a search/data.id, And this will create a URL with a dynamic path parameter. How do we work with dynamic path parameter in React Native? With Expo router, we are going to go on the search folder, and to specify that the URL of our screen is going to have a variable, like a dynamic path parameter. In the search index, I'm going to replace it with this syntax. I'm going to put a square brackets, and I'm going to say ID. And this ID is going to parse the value that we are going to send whenever we redirect to search, and everything that goes after is going to go here in the ID. So the data.id of the search is going to be passed here, and in the search results screen, we can get access to it through the use local search parameters. And if I do here search result and then ID, we should see the ID that we are trying to search now. If I go here, oops, but I need to reload because I've made some changes. So if I do here, search result 6, which means that we are looking at the search result page for the item with ID 6, which should be the last one here. Yes. Why do we need this ID here? Well, because we can go ahead and in a use effect say, hey, when this ID changes, I'm going to add it as in the array here. Go ahead and call Supabase from the table searches, select every column, so select everything, where the ID is equal to the ID that we received through the path parameter. So dot equal will add a conditional. And now I can do dot single to take the first item. And then I can do something with it. For example, data, for example. Console log. Let's do console log data. Console log result data. So if I search something and go there, I see a result and it has the data. So I need to destructure it. So I need from here to destructure data. And that's going to be the information about that search, including the query and the user ID and so on. We can take that information, store it in state to be able to display like what the user searched back then. Set search use state, and here when we get the data, I'm going to do set search data. Now having this search, I can render what the user was searching. Search.query should go here, but initially the search is going to be null, so I can do if search is null, then return an activity indicator, which is going to be a spinner, like loading state. Otherwise, render the query. So now if I'm gonna go ahead and do MacBook and do search, I'm gonna go there and I see what I'm looking at, like at the search. I can style it a little bit, for example, margin 2. Or maybe I can put it into a view that will be the header. And this view is going to have a class name, background white. Let's do margin 2, padding 2, and I don't need on the text margin. And let's do rounded and also shadow. Let's reload. Do hello, search. I'm gonna go there and it's gonna display the hello with font semi-bold, so that we know like what did we search for. And maybe you can even do text search dot created at when it was created, and maybe also the status, search dot status, all information about the state search. It's new. I can do here gap 2 to add some spacing around, and I can also format the search using the notjust library. So for that I can simply do npm install notjust. I need to import notjust at the top, import notjust, and I can also import a relative time, which is an extension from notjust. Let me remember how I did it. notjust slash plugin slash a relative time. So having this plugin, we need to apply it to notjust. How is it called? Plugin app. notjust dot. How do you apply a plugin? Extend or relative time. So we are extending the functionality of notjust with relative time. And now what I can do is I can parse this search into notjust, and I can say from now, and it will tell me how much time ago it happened, like 2 minutes ago, exactly what we needed. And if I do something again, it's going to say a few seconds ago. So perfect. I really like how it's turning out. Like we can, and all of these searches are saved on our database. And what that means is that the next time we're gonna go here on this page, which is our tabs index, what we can do is we can display the history, what the user already searched. I'm gonna do that by creating a past searches, set past searches, or history, set history. Is going to be use state, initially empty array. And in a use effect, we're gonna load this data. Use effect. Let's go ahead and do Supabase dot from table searches. Let's select everything. And you might think that we need a equal sign to say that, hey, select only the searches that belong to our user with user ID equal to our ID. And you would need that only if a user would have access to all the searches. But because through auth policy, we said that the select, and actually they have access to all of them. But look what I can do. I can allow only the user. If I do edit policy, yeah, let me do with equal. It's okay. I'm gonna do with equal. So I'm gonna say dot equal, where user ID is equal to user.id, and the result I'm going to take as data, and let's set inside history data, inside history state. I'm not sure what's gonna be there, but let's go ahead and do a console log history. So if I look here, it doesn't exist. Why? Not past history, simply history. So if I look here, okay, we have data. It's an array with, as I can see, it's some state about past searches. What we can do now is take this array history, come here on our page. After the header, let's go ahead and render a flat list from React Native with this history, where data is going to be history. And when we render item, we're going to render the past searches. We can do that with a view and with a text that is going to say item dot query. That's what the user is searching for. So now we see iPhone, iPhone 12, and so on until the end. Perfect. That's exactly what we needed. And through the content container class name, we can add here a padding free, a gap 2. The text can have font class name, font semi-bold. Perfect. Maybe we can also display the time when it was created. So created that. But we can put it through the JS. Let's import the JS. And we can format it maybe from now if you want. Yeah, probably let's do from now. But whenever using from now, we need to make sure that we are extending this JS. By importing the js.plugin.relativeTime, we import relative time and we do js.extend relative time. So okay, we see iPhone 14 minutes ago, but the second title doesn't have to be bold. But what I want to do is I want to say color gray, and maybe the first one will have font AMD or text small, medium, large, LG. Yeah, large is okay. Here class name, a gap 1. Probably doesn't even need a gap. Yeah. Maybe a border bottom. With some padding. And the border gray 200 to be very, very barely visible. Okay, should we do BG white here? Maybe BG white on the whole screen. What do you think? So the whole screen, I'm going to put it into a view with a class name BG white and a flex one. Okay, now everything is white. Perfect. Okie dokie, so we have our searches, but it goes from the first search to the most recent search. What we can do is when querying from Supabase, after the equal, we can say order based on created at, and here we can say ascending false to order from the most recent, which is 8 minutes ago, to that one. Now if I write new one, search. If I go back and I need to reload the application to a separate function called const fetch history. And call the fetch history in the use effect, and also call fetch history in the flat list in the on refresh fetch history. And for refreshing, we can say false. So now if I'm gonna write something here and I go there, and if I come back, I can scroll down to fetch the new data, to update it. So that's going to bring the new fetch result here. Perfect. Here we have it, and this is our search database. Let me double check if we have any problems. I think I need to remove some console logs. Data. I have this, and you also might have like these red warnings. This is because I'm a bit sloppy on the types, like I didn't type everything properly. If we have time, I'm gonna show you how we can type everything so we have even IntelliSense and we do not have like these red warnings. But for now, I think we are good, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do git add, git commit, searches database. All right. So how are you doing, guys? Everything good so far? Are you following along? Or am I going too fast? Hello, Liz. How are you doing? Good to see you here. Yes, the project is going to live on the channel, so you can watch it at any time later at your own pace. Bosch is asking, when working on a React Native application, I find some difficulties when working on the backend. How do I get better? I think it goes with practice, just by building projects, trying to start from easy projects and then increase the complexity with every project that you're building, and you'll naturally get better. Whenever, like, try with projects, build some fun projects. Whenever you feel that there are gaps in specific topics, like you're gonna get into some issues or troubles with SQL, then go ahead and read more about SQL, try things with SQL. Then you're gonna learn about something else. So by doing, you're gonna naturally uncover all of these areas that maybe now you don't know that you don't know. Okay. Hello, Mike. Thank you very much. So, looking at our schema here, we have our database. We have it ready, right? Now, it's going to be about edge functions. The fun part. Edge functions, what are they? In Supabase, we have these edge functions, which are scalable functions that run your code with no server management. This is basically serverless code that runs in the cloud on the backend side. With the Supabase implementation of these edge functions, they are using TypeScript, and they're also using Dino. I don't see where they're saying that, but Dino is very similar to Node.js. It's created by the same creator, but it has like some slight change differences on how we are importing stuff. But I'm gonna explain that together. So what we need to do is we need to first create locally a Supabase function. But before that, let's configure our local environment for Supabase. I'm gonna point you towards some documentation, Supabase local development. This is going to be the URL to get started with local development. So, developing locally will allow you to debug these functions locally, invoke them, deploy them, and so on. So the way we're gonna do that, first we need the Supabase CLI. In the getting started, let's go into the getting started. You can install the Supabase CLI globally. You could do that through a lot of methods, but the way I'm going to work with Supabase is going to be through npm by always calling npx Supabase. This way I don't have to store a global Supabase on my machine and I don't have to always think about updating it. I can use npx Supabase and npx will download and update it and keep it up to date whenever I need it. So whenever we're gonna see you have to execute, let's say, Supabase login, always put npx in front of it. And in this case, it's going to be npx login. So that's about installing. Yeah, I don't have to keep track of updating. Then we are talking about running Supabase locally. Supabase is open source and you can use the supabase.com. Basically, you can host it on Supabase, but you can also run it anywhere, locally on your own servers, and that's the power of Supabase. To run it locally, all you need is the Docker desktop. So follow this link, install Docker desktop, which is available both for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and that will allow you to run these Dockerized applications. I'm gonna make sure that Docker desktop is running in my case. And I think it should be running. If I go to the dashboard, I see it here. Perfect. And that means that we are ready to initialize our project using Supabase init, which will create the Supabase folder. Let's go ahead in our application. Make sure that you have your code committed, because if we make some mistakes, we can always go back. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run Supabase init. Remember, we need to put npx always in front. So let's run npx Supabase init. This will ask us if we want to generate VS Code settings for Dino. Yes, let's press yes, because we want that. And Supabase init finished. Now we have here a folder called Supabase. Perfect. This will create. Now we can start it. Now we can do npx Supabase start. This failed in my case because another project is running, but it's telling me like how to stop it by running this command and also with npx. So npx Supabase stop and the project ID that I had previously running. That is going to stop the previous project and I'm going to be able to run again npx Supabase start. Now I go back to start. And if you don't have to, but just for you to know what's happening now, if you look in the Docker desktop, you're going to see shortly a new project and all the containers for Supabase downloaded and running here. You see, it's downloading some Docker containers, which is basically images that are running in a separate environment and making it easy to port it and run it anywhere, basically. And after that is downloaded, it's going to start, and you're basically going to have a Supabase running locally without even needing supabase.com. And at the end, we're gonna see some data, and you can access this data every time using Supabase status, npx Supabase status, and you have like all the information like the API URL, the studio URL. If you access this HTTP localhost, that's going to open a dashboard very similar to what you saw before, but this is running locally on your machine. It's not the supabase.com. So you can do all of these things here. If we look in the table editor, we're going to see that we don't have any tables because we have set them up on supabase.com, if you see at the top. So let's go ahead and link our local database with our remote one. Let's pull all the changes from a remote. And when I mention remote, I mean the supabase.com, the one that we hosted on supabase.com. To do that, all we need is from supabase.com under project settings, under general, there is the reference ID. Let's copy this reference ID. Let's go back in our project and let's run npx supabase link -- project ref and paste the reference project. What that is going to do is it's going to link your local Supabase configuration from this folder with your remote from supabase.com. We need the database password, and I forgot it, and most probably you also forgot it, but we can go under the database configuration on supabase.com, and under database password we can press reset password and we can put here a new one. Let's try suggest wrong password and let's copy it, reset password. That's gonna reset our password remotely. I can go back in my terminal, paste the password here, press enter, and now we're connecting to remote database and the Supabase link finished. Now this folder has the Supabase link from there. The next step is to say, hey, take all the changes for the tables, the configuration about authentication and so on, and bring them locally here. To do that, we're gonna run npx supabase db for the database, pull, this will pull changes from the linked project. Update remote, let's do yes. And we see that the auth and storage schema are excluded because they are by default, but in Supabase we have migrations, which is basically a huge SQL file. When executed, it's going to set the database with all the tables like products, we've created that and so on, with all the constraints and foreign keys, with all the row level security, like everything that we have remotely. At any time we can reinitiate anywhere. For example, I can go ahead and do npx supabase start again, and I think that now if I do npx supabase status and open the studio URL, the local studio URL, I believe it's going to have the tables that we have remotely as well. I'm gonna go in table editor. It doesn't. Maybe I need to do stop. Even if it doesn't work, like we don't need this feature, but it's possible. Maybe like let's try npx just start again. Starting database from backup. Let me just Supabase apply migrations locally. I just don't want to get into this trap because we don't need this feature. It's possible, you just need to find it here in the documentation. Reset, I think it's reset. Apply your migration. Now that you have migration file, you can run this migration and create the table. Yeah, I think with reset it should work. but I will not do it because I don't need the tables locally. Reset. I really hope unknown command reset. Should be db reset. Guys, I'm not gonna do it because really we don't need it, and I risk to break something and to spend like a lot of time figuring it out. Why I needed it locally is for the ability to create and code our edge functions. Let's go ahead and create our first edge function. And from that diagram that we have here, the first edge function is going to be the one that will start the scraping job. Let's go ahead and create a function by running npx supabase functions new, and let's call it scrape start or start scraping. What this command did is created in the Supabase a folder functions and a folder scrape start with index.tsx. This is basically the default function using Dino, but it's basically very similar to Node.js. I'll press save. And what it's doing now, if we send a request to this function, it's going to respond us with hello and the name. So here in the comments, it also shows us how we can test this one. I'll have to do npx supabase start. This will restart the project. Maybe I need to restart it, I don't know. But we can make a request using this command towards our function scrape start, and we're gonna see if it works. Function not found, because I need to do npx supabase. It should be serve. I don't see where it's serve. Because if you restart it, it probably will work, but I'm gonna also do npx supabase functions serve, and by doing npx supabase functions serve this is basically going to connect to the, it's going to run the function, and it's going to also show the logs of that function. We need to leave this one open, and in a new terminal we can copy this curl request that was generated for us in the function body, send it here, and we're gonna see message hello functions. And if I go back from the logs of the function, we can see here hello from functions. So that's how we can develop and debug these functions that will later be deployed to Supabase, and we can invoke them from anywhere. What does this function need to do? This function needs to start a web scraper API. Let's think how we're gonna do that. First of all, let's go ahead on BrightData and see how the web scraper API works. So on our BrightData, we're gonna go again under API. We're gonna find the e-commerce Amazon.com and the specifically Amazon product search. And there is a button start setting an API call. This is a helper tool that allows us to create requests. For example, the first thing is here under API token, we need to get an API token. Let's go ahead and press this button. That's going to go under our account, and under API tokens, we are going to create a new one. I think I can only have one API token, so I'm going to remove a previous one. I'm going to revoke it. Oh, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I need to confirm the two-factor authentication. And that's what we should see. So under account settings, user access, under API tokens, we need to create an API token. The permission is going to be user, expiration date, you can do unlimited. Or for me, I'm gonna leave it to expire at some point. Let's create this API token. And this is the API token. We need to copy it and keep it somewhere safe. This is very important. Like, we cannot use this API token from client-side code, because anyone with this API token will be able to use my BrightData account. I'm gonna remove it later, so don't even try to use it. But for now, let me double check if I copied, got it, and dismiss. Now I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna store it somewhere. For a second, I'm gonna put it in some notes so that I have this API token. Now let's go back to the Amazon product search where we started building our API request. So from overview, press start setting an API call, and let's paste the API token here. That is going to auto-populate it in the request that will generate for us. Now for the inputs, what we're gonna do is I'm going to leave, let's say, only the first keyword, because with this endpoint, we can run multiple searches at the same time. I'm gonna do only one, so I'm gonna leave only this Xbox. I'm gonna limit multiple requests to only 10 items. So I need only 10 items for a request. And I'm gonna stop here. What I need to do now is I need to simply copy this command. And from a terminal, from any kind of terminal, I'm gonna do clear. I need to execute this curl command. What we get back is a snapshot ID. If I take this snapshot ID, I can go to the next step under the delivery options, and I can request data about this snapshot and in format JSON. So I can copy this command again, can go to the terminal and say, hey, give me data for this snapshot. If I ask it, it's going to give me data about that snapshot. And if I go, I'm going to open a new tab, not to lose this one. And I'm going to go to API and API logs. You're going to see that just now, was it this one? Yeah, I think it was this one. If I'll look for the I don't think it's gonna show here. Let me double check. We can look at it by checking the snapshot ID. The snapshot ID was this one. So will I find the request? Yes, it was the last one. So under the API logs, you're gonna see the job that was executed for this request. And it took 12 times to collect the data, to scrape the data. And it got us 10 records. And these records, we receive them from JSON. So let's go back and understand what's happening here. What we are doing is with this request, that is simply a request towards the HTTPS API BrightData.com datasets v3 trigger. So we are triggering a dataset with this ID, with these parameters, like only 10 per result. We are sending this data like keywords, and we are sending our API token. By sending a GET request here or a POST request here, we are initializing a job. From our diagram, basically we are simulating this arrow, initializing a job. Let's call it start scraping. Now web scraper API is going to go ahead and use some scraping tools. It's going to go on Amazon, it's going to get data, and it's going to stop there. Nothing is happening. We just started and BrightData is storing that information on their end. In the second function, we sent another request. Hey, give me data about give me data that you scraped. So that's going to be another call here. We're gonna think about the second one in a second, but let's go ahead and implement this one from our application. Because what we have to do is basically send this curl request. I'm gonna paste it there. I'm gonna put it from multiple rows so that we can see what's happening. Data request. This is the curl request that we need to implement. So when we execute our Dino function, I'm gonna remove this data. Or let's just add some spacing here. And we need to send this request towards BrightData. To send a request, we can do fetch, because fetch is available in Dino, in everywhere. And we can send it to this URL. I'm gonna copy it like this, paste it here. This is the URL. From the curl to fetch the URL. Now, after the URL, we need to send some data here. For example, the method should be a post request. The headers, we need some headers. As you can see, the headers in curl are with H. So at least we need content type. So let's copy this content type and put it under headers. It should be both of them put inside strings like this. Yeah. So headers content type. Another header is the authorization. So authorization is going to be this API token from BrightData. I'm using hard-coded. Later, we're going to put it in environment variables. I'm just trying to see something happening. So we have a URL, we have a header, lastly is this -d. -d stands for data, and the data is the body of our post request. The body should be a string, but it should be a JSON stringified string. So it should be a JSON. So why is this happening? Come on, turn off. So the body is going to be this string, this JSON. I'm gonna put it here. So it's going to be an array of keyword Xbox, URL, pages to search. Let's go ahead and do const result is going to be equal to fetch. And then what I can do is result JSON is equal to await result.json, and let's do a console log result JSON. Let's go ahead and simply invoke this function again. We have it running somewhere. We have it running in this terminal. If we don't, we simply have to do npx Supabase functions serve. And in another terminal, I'm going to invoke it using this curl command that we see here. We are going to send a GET request towards our function. And if I do that, we see still hello functions. But if I go back into where our project is running, we see the snapshot ID. Basically, we see the response from BrightData that, hey, I got your request, I started the job, here is the ID, ask me later what's the status or what's the data. So that means that from an edge function, we successfully triggered a job on BrightData to start fetching. Now our goal is to improve a little bit here At least I would like to extract the key from the source code to an environment variable. So on Supabase, we can go Supabase edge function secrets, and we can manage environments. We can get it through the dino.env. We can put env, for example, local file under Supabase directory. For example, under Supabase, we can create here a new file called .env, maybe .local. I'm going to leave it env. And here, let's do BrightData API key. And the API key for BrightData is going to be this one. Now I'm going to replace this with a template string, and I'm going to access it as a variable as dino.env .get and the name that we specified here in the env, BrightData API key. So now this is going to come from environments. I need to make sure that this .env file is not going to be committed to Git by checking Git status. cd Supabase Git status. And we see that it's not going to be added. That's good. And now whenever I start the function, I need to go ahead and specify that, hey, when you serve this function, take the environment file from supabase.env. Basically specify the URL to the environment file that should be used when running them locally. Now it's running, we can go ahead and invoke it again by sending this request. And we have a snapshot ID, which means that we no longer have the environment key in code, we are using it from the environment variables. And lastly, while we're speaking about environment variables, for production secrets, we can go ahead and say, hey, Supabase, set secrets in your cloud environment, in the production environment, based on the file that we provided here. Another way you can do it is you can run Supabase secret set and then name and file. So I'm going to do here, I'm going to right away upload Supabase secrets by doing npx Supabase secrets set based on the environment file .supabase.env, the env file that we created for Supabase. Now it was set. You can double check that through that somewhere here. I don't remember exactly where, but you should have the secrets in your Supabase on supabase.com. Yeah, I'll not find them right now, but it should be under project settings, secret somewhere here. Okay. What else? What else do we need to improve on this function? Let's look through the API. We triggered dataset ID. This is specific for the dataset that we're working for. Limit results, it's okay. Method post, this one okay. The keyword should be dynamic, right? Because we need to specify the keyword that we want to search for. And the keyword, I'm going to extract it into a function called start scraping. This function is going to have keyword, and what it's going to do, it's going to do this fetch and then take the JSON and return the response.json. This function should be async. So now it's going to be easier because we are going to take this keyword, we're going to put it here, and we can call new scrape job is equal to await start scraping, and here we can say, I don't know, iPhone. And we can console log the new scrape. And if I'm going to invoke it again, here, start scrape. And if I check here, we see snapshot ID. Yeah, it worked. And you can double check that on the API logs here by looking at this snapshot ID. And you're gonna see what was the request URL. So it's dataset, so 1. And it's actually already ready. But still, we are sending this iPhone here manually. What we want to do is, for every new search item in our table, we want to say, hey, start running a scraping job for this item. And based on this item, you're going to have a query here. So that means that we're going to have to send through the request the record, the search record that we are going to work with. So this is going to be a search record, basically one line from here, and the line will have that query. So I can start the scraping for record dot, let's say record dot query. So record dot query. What I should do next is, you see the record table, the searches table, they have here snapshot ID. I would like to go back in the table and update this field with the snapshot ID so that later I can look for the data from BrightData for this scrape job. So what I have to do is I will look at Supabase edge functions, Supabase GS, invoke, no, I need edge function database. I'll try to find in the docs where it explains how you can create a client and then interact with a database from your function. So where is the docs for this? Oh, here, examples, use Supabase GS. So we can go ahead and create a client. We're going to import create client at the top of our edge function. Let's import it. And inside our dino.serve, we're going to initialize this Supabase client like this. So here, inside dino.serve, after the new scrape job, we're going to initialize a new Supabase client. And having this Supabase client, we can go ahead and do data error. We can say, hey, Supabase, go ahead and access the table called searches, and update the field, how is the field called? Snapshot ID, snapshot ID, snapshot ID, come on, snapshot underscore ID, using the new scrape dot, I think it's also snapshot ID, new scrape, snapshot ID. That's what BrightData gives us back. And usually when I update, I also like to send the, maybe here we can update the status of our search to scraping, because previously it was new, now it's going to be scraping. And also I will update the updated at, if I have such a field. No, I don't, it's just created at, but it's last scraped at. This is going to be updated when we receive a result. So I'll leave it like this. But update these fields to the row that has the ID equal to the record. We have information about the item that we have to update, so record.id. Then I can go ahead and do select to get it back, and then dot single to take the item. So now this data, I think I'm gonna remove the other data just to have this data, and I'm gonna return back. Basically, I'm gonna return back the updated search row from the database. The only thing that is gonna change is the request that we're gonna send, because in the data, we're no longer gonna have name. We're gonna have here record, which is going to be an object with at least ID, and it should have an ID. For example, let's go for a search with query iPhone. So ID1, and the query is going to be equal to iPhone. So make sure you properly type it like this. Query, is it correct? Yeah, I think it's going to work. And let's try to execute this curl request to send a new request to our edge function. Let's see what's gonna happen now. We see null. Most probably there was an error. So let's go ahead and do a console log error here from the Supabase client and send the request again and go back to the logs. We see error is null. Most probably, like if I look at the logs, I'm gonna see that, do we have new API calls? I don't think we do have. So what's happening there? Serving the request with hello from functions. Let me do a console log where. In the new scrape, do a console log new scrape. I know why it might be a problem. Because we are working with a local database, but I expect it to update the remote one. So snapshot ID is there, but when it tries to update, there is no item in our local database. So what I'm gonna do is, now I'm gonna try to deploy this function so that it will work on remote on supabase.com. To deploy a function, all we have to do is call npx supabase functions deploy, and that will take this local function and deploy it to supabase.com. Now if I go to Supabase dashboard, under edge functions, we're gonna have a new function here. And by clicking on it, we're gonna see invocations and logs. To trigger it, we're gonna need the endpoint URL. So let's copy this endpoint URL. Let's go back to our code, because we are again going to trigger it manually through a curl request. I'm gonna add here a bit of space. I'm gonna duplicate this curl request, and I'm gonna change only the endpoint URL, because everything else, well, actually not everything else. Let me update the invocation URL, this one, to my remote one, and the authorization as well, because the authorization needs the anonymous key from project settings API anon key. I'm going to copy this one and update it in the second request for the remote. Leave bearer, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, and just replace the token. And this one is a remote request. Now let's try to copy it and send the request to our remote function. What's going to happen? It's going to invoke the remote function. It's going to give us null, which means that something went wrong. But we can go to our edge functions, to this function, invocation, no results, logs. We have some results, which is good. We have a log snapshot ID. It generated the job correctly, but we have here the results contains 0 rows. JSON object requested multiple or no rows returned. Most probably that's because of let me check. Maybe because of the rules. So on the table editor, under searches, let's go ahead and check auth policy. Enable insert for authenticated. Enable read for authenticated. Enable update for users based on email. But it's not based on email, hopefully. It's based on user ID. So why? I'm wondering if this should be a string like this. It's also null. So Supabase client from searches, did I call it correctly? Now I'm doubting everything. So the table is searches. We are updating snapshot ID, where ID is equal to record ID. But it's anonymous. Oh, yeah. Yes. It's about authorization rules. So look what's happening. It's taking the token from the authorization rules that we are sending to this request. And when we are invoking this function, we basically put here the anonymous key, the anon key. That's why it's failing. But if a user would invoke this query, it would work. And I will show this by going to our product page, for our search page. And let's invoke it. Let's actually, yes, that's a better way, because I think curl request is a bit confusing. And we are using an anonymous authentication token. We need an actual user authentication token to invoke it. So I'm going to go, let me leave it open, but I'm going to go in my application. And when I press on one of these items, I want to redirect to the search screen. So in the tabs index, where we render this flat list, I want to change this one to a pressable, where we render screens, and I will put it inside the link from Expo router that will redirect to href. slash where slash up slash slash, why there is no search? I will just do slash search and then the ID of a search, and the ID of a search is going to be item.id, and I'll do it as child in order to the link to render this pressable. So now if I press here, okay, we have. If I'm gonna go to the first iPhone, I'll add there a button in this at the top of this screen that would start a manual job. So let's go to the search ID, and on this button let's add a button from React Native with a title start scraping, and on press I'm going to say start scraping, which is going to be a local function defined here, const start scraping. It's probably going to be an async function that is going to use the Supabase client. Await. Again, data error is always what Supabase gives us back. So await Supabase dot functions dot invoke, and here we provide the name of a function, which is called, how did we call it? Scrape start. So scrape dash start, and as a second parameter we give here the body, which is going to be a JSON stringify record, and the record is going to be our search item. This is not await but const, and let's do console log data and error, and let's try to invoke it from our application now being authenticated as a user. So if I press start scraping and look in the logs of our React Native, boom, we see the updated one with the status scraping, and it should also have a snapshot ID. Where is it? Snapshot ID, boom, here. So now it was just our authorization rules that was preventing us from doing unauthorized scraping. That's actually the benefit of doing everything here through Supabase, because now only if you're logged in, you can start a scraping job. And because we have that ID, now we can go ahead and find it here. We see that it finished, it is ready, and we can go ahead and use it. Whew. Perfect. So that means that our, let's say, scrape start function is almost ready. So let's recap. Whenever we are calling this start scraping function, we are sending there a search item with a query that the user wrote, with ID, status, and so on. Then we are invoking the BrightData datasets API, and we are sending this request. Hey, go ahead and scrape Amazon for this keyword, specifically Amazon.com. We get back an ID for that job, and we update the database to set the ID there and to update the status. Now having that ID, now that means that we are almost kind of ready with the first edge function. Let's make it green, even though we're going to have to come back here for a second. So now, how do we get the data? The data, we can get it through a couple of ways. we can send a request to this BrightData dataset snapshots using the ID of that snapshot, and we're gonna get the response. Basically, we look into the database for iPhone. Come on. We take the snapshot ID and we send a new request with this snapshot ID to this URL. And you're gonna see that if I send it now, we should have data about iPhone, like it should be exactly about iPhone. So let's see. I'm gonna search for iPhone here. And yes, we see iPhone SE, and so on. So this is data for a scrape job that we perform here. So what we could do is we could do the same thing that we have done for the start scraping. We can invoke the web scraper API and say, hey, do you have data for this snapshot or not? But the thing is that we don't know how long it takes BrightData to scrape that job. Sometimes it takes 10 seconds, sometimes it takes 24, sometimes it takes 20, 10, and so on. So in your case, you'd either have to ask BrightData over and over, hey, do you have data? Hey, do you have data? Hey, do you have data? Until BrightData says, yeah, finally I have data, I'm gonna give it to you. Or another way, instead of asking BrightData, is going to be to say, hey, start this job, and when you're done, you send data to me. So in a way, we are gonna tell BrightData, hey, when the job is finished, go ahead and call this function with the response. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that through the first request. But well, first let me go ahead and create this edge function that is going to be ready to get data from BrightData. I'm gonna go ahead and create this function in our project by running npx supabase functions new scrape complete, or scrape and, like, call it as you want, but it's basically the webhook, the function that BrightData will call with the data after a scrape is finished. Now that we have it here, scrape complete, let's open it. And let's go ahead and console log the whole request here, the whole request JSON. So I'm gonna get request JSON. I'm gonna remove a name here, so I'm just gonna do hello. And I'm gonna say, hey, console log the whole request JSON by stringifying it, so I can look through the logs to see what data are we receiving. Null and then 2. So that's the only thing that I changed here. We just console log the request because we don't know yet what we're gonna get back. Let's go ahead and deploy this function, Supabase functions deploy. And what we're gonna see if we go to our supabase.com edge functions, we're gonna see a scrape complete function with this URL, with this endpoint URL. Now, if I take this endpoint URL and go manually to BrightData to this API tester, look what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna search for Xbox, and I'm gonna perform the first action. I'm gonna perform this start scraping request, but I'm gonna change it slightly by saying that, hey, send to webhook, let's enable it. The webhook URL is going to be this one. This is the URL that we say, hey, BrightData, call this URL when you're ready. But we need to give him permissions by putting here a BRR token, and the token that we're gonna put here is going to be, I think we can go ahead and take the from project settings, API. Let's try with the public key and let's put it here. Now, if I copy this request and go into a terminal to send the request to BrightData by saying, do this scraping, and when you're done, call back a function that I told you, call back the URL that I told you. And we see that malform input a URL. Why? Here is the HTTP request, authorization header, provide the authorization token or credential. Let's just double check if we don't have any empty spaces. Authorization. Endpoint. What's this? Header, off header. It doesn't have to be here, off header. The off header should not be there. I don't know what happened there. Authorization header. Oh, maybe I don't need bearer. I just need the token. Let's try this way. Just the token. Snapshot ID. We got the snapshot ID. But let's check the status of it on the logs from BrightData. It's running, and now it's ready. Yeah, it took only 9 seconds, which means that it should have called our API, our edge function. Let's go to our edge functions, under scrape complete, under logs, and let's see if it was invoked. It wasn't, maybe because of a token. Yes, it's 401, which means that it was not allowed to call this function. There are two ways. You can either go to details of a function and disable JWT verification, or you can go ahead under the configuration API and take the secret key and use the secret key here. I'm gonna use the secret key. Is this the secret key? Copy. And I'm gonna copy it. I'm going to send it again. And I'm gonna see the result. If I go here to the edge functions, complete, invocation, we should see a new one. And under the logs, we should start seeing logs after it is finished. It's ready. Logs, invocations. Again. Why? I'm going to go ahead and disable it for a second. Save. I disabled the JWT verification. Not sure what's happening there. But now, in a couple of seconds, this function should be invoked. What again? 401? No, it's 200. And in the logs, we should have an array with parsed data, with information about the product for that Xbox search. Awesome. The only thing that we're gonna append to this URL that we are sending here is a question mark and the ID of the search. For example, this request is for the search for, And by doing that, we are going to be able to know, because as you can see in the logs of that data is just an array of data. So we need to know, okay, but for what search was that made? And to do that, we're gonna use it through the query parameters of the edge function. So that means that we will have to change slightly the way we are sending the request to start the collection. And as you can see here, the webhook URL should go under where? It should go under endpoint. So it's endpoint. And then there is auth header. So these are the two that we need. Endpoint and auth header that ends here with end. So I'm gonna copy them. Make sure to copy, you see endpoint here. And then there is auth header and it ends with this end format. I'm gonna copy it. And in the first function that we have, scrape start, when we send this request, probably a better way that is going to be a bit less confusing is to use URL search parameters class. So search params is going to equal to a new URL search parameters. And here we can specify them through options. For example, dataset ID is going to be equal to the value of this dataset ID. This is the value. Let's put it here. Then limit multiple is going to be 10. It's going to be 10 as a string. Then what else do we need? Dataset ID, okay. Then as I said, we need this endpoint. And the endpoint, you take it either from here or from Supabase, the URL of your function that is called complete. Like what function we need to call back. Here, as I said, I want to add a question mark, search or ID. And this ID is going to be the ID of a search is equal to search ID. Where do we take it from? In a second, we're going to figure it out. But lastly, we need that auth header, right? We need the auth header, which should be an authorization header, but we can probably take it from the user somewhere. So let's go ahead and do it like this. We're gonna, besides the keyword, we're gonna also have a search ID of type string. When we start scraping, we can easily send there the record.id, the ID of a record. Now for the auth header, we're gonna do definitely BRR, and then after that, I think I can do a non-key, dino.env a non-key, the anonymous key here. Now the search parameters, we're gonna append here to this URL at the end as search parameters dot to string. And that should be it. So we have dataset, limit, endpoint, and off header. Let's go ahead and try to in the complete function, I want to also to get the URL of our function that was called request.url, and I will take just the ID parameter from the search parameters to know like what search is this result for. So let's get the ID, and let's also console log search ID and ID. Now let's go ahead and try to deploy everything. npx supabase deploy, and we're going to try to invoke it from actually the application. I'm going to invoke start scraping from here. Let's see, everything worked. A new job should be started here on BrightData for scraping. After it is done, it's supposed to go ahead and call our edge function, and we're going to check the logs to see what is the result of edge function. It's ready. Let's go on our edge functions under scrape complete, under logs. We are supposed to see something. Invocations, logs. It didn't work. It didn't work. Right? It didn't work. It didn't invoke it. But why? Let's check here the request URL. Because this was the idea, right? The snapshot ID was this one. And off header, it has endpoint. Supabase function, scrape complete ID, ID1. Off header. What do you think is the problem? Endpoint. It should be endpoint, right? Question mark. Endpoint. URL decode. Let's try to decode this URL encoded stuff and see. So it's HTTPS Supabase function scrape complete question mark ID and off header. Off underscore header. Off underscore header. Endpoint. Anyone sees the problem? In the offer, I should not add bearer. I think I should, but we could try. Let's try it. Let's redeploy after we do that. So didn't it? I will update it again to just double check. I redeployed. Let's start scraping. Endpoint. There is also the field format JSON, which in the testing I have. There is also another one, uncompressed true, which I had but now I don't. I'm not sure which one will impact it. And in my case, I did the word that I cannot pronounce. Supabase unknown key. Did environment get. But for the endpoint function, scrape finish, scrape complete, question mark, ID, and the ID. Keyword. And then here is the question. And to string. Yeah, if this one didn't work, let me check. It did not invoke. I'll try now with these two, format and uncompressed. Let's deploy. What else can be the problem? But I don't think. Start scraping. It has a new one, snapshot ID. Let's look at the logs in BrightData. It's running. It's running and but it didn't add the bearer. But anyway, because I disable the authorization checks, it doesn't really matter if I have here bearer or not, because probably it's going to ignore it completely. It's ready. Now in Edge functions. Come on, do it. Yes, we have it. So we have search ID 1 and an array of products. How awesome. Now all we have to do is take these products and save it in our database for this search ID. And I do believe we need the bearer word. So let me put it back. But the most important part is in the search scrape complete. We saw that we have ID for the ID of a search. We have the request.json, which is an array of products following the very similar, the same structure as the dummy data that we had here. Array of products with these fields, async, URL, name, and so on. So all we have to do is store them in database. Let's look in scrape.start how we initialized the Supabase client. Let's also initialize this Supabase client in our scrape complete. Scrape complete. We need to import the create client at the top as we did here in the scrape complete. And we need to do a couple of things. Save all products and then update search state or status. So let's save all products. Let's first of all go ahead and do products is equal to request.json. That's already an array. And what we need to do is we need to map for it. And for every scraped product, we need to generate a product following our database structure. So our database structure for products is this one. Well, we have async. So async is going to be scrape products.async. We have we're gonna, for the updated add, let's do here updated add is equal to new date dot to ISO string. So I'm going to store the updated add because this might also be an updated product, not necessarily a new product. I'm gonna store the name using scrape product. Or maybe even I can call product here, but just remember that this is, I will call it P, just for simplicity. But this is a scraped one, and it has this structure. So it has these fields. And we are parsing it to something that our database works with. For example, here name. We have image, p.image. We have URL, p.url. We have final price. Do we have final price here? Yes. Final price, which is p.final price. Final price. We have currency, p.currency. We have a search ID. On our database product, actually we don't have a search ID. We have here a link products with search IDs. So products is ready. What we have to do now is call await Supabase dot, let's call not Supabase client but simply Supabase. So await Supabase dot from products. I want to insert, but actually I don't want to insert, because if there is already a product with this ID, I want to update it. So the operation to insert or update is called upsert. So I'm going to upsert the products, because if you look at the products, for example, under API docs, in the insert, we can insert multiple products at the same time by giving here an array inside the insert. So that's what I'm doing. I'm upserting or inserting an array of products. Now we need to link. So product search links is going to be for every product that we have here. For every product, what we need to do is we need to create a link, and the link is this product search that has asyn on the one side and search ID on the other side. Search ID and asyn. So we need ID. ID is going to be not ID, but asyn is going to be p.asyn, and search underscore ID is going to be the ID of a search that we got here. So we have this product search links. We need to insert them in Supabase. Supabase dot from. Let's insert them in the table product search. Product search dot upsert product search links. But here we are not specifying an ID. So it's going to be interesting how upserting in this situation will work if a product is already there. So let me check the upsert documentation, because there is upsert Supabase. Because it has constraints like upsert on conflict handle. On conflict. So on conflict, depending on the columns passed on conflict. Yeah, like this one, I'm gonna say here, like it might have a bug, might insert extra links when a product is updated and it's not new. But we can look at it a bit later. And lastly, we need to update the search to say that the status has changed. So I'm gonna go await Supabase dot from searches. I want to update the status to finished or done or scraped or done. And there is last scraped at, which I'm gonna give him updated at field. And I'm gonna update the row where ID equals to our ID here. Of course, you would do error handling here, but in my case, I just try to do it like this. I'm just thinking about if this function is going to allow to perform this upsert, because it's not going to, unless it's going to use here not the anonymous key but the secret key. So Supabase edge secret key. Can I get access to the secret key? It's called service role key and it's available there. So I can go ahead and use the service role key in the scrape complete in order for the scrape complete in order for this function to have access to any functions. I'm just thinking if it's not going to ruin a little bit the security, because if this function is called by anyone, it can update stuff. So probably you'd rather not put this one here, but you'd give it to, look where you're gonna give it. You're not gonna put it here. Anyway, let's try it this way. Functions deploy. I really want to see something in the database. And now let's try to go ahead and do the same scraping from iPhone. And after it is done, I would like to see products in the database. Okay, it's ready. Now if I'm gonna go to the products database, nothing here. Searches, is the search for iPhone still scraping? So that means that in the edge functions, in the complete, in the logs, we should have some errors. But we didn't log them, so probably we should log them. You see, we didn't log them. So let's go ahead and do, in the products, let's do const error, product error. Let's console log products error. Let's do the same for the second upsert for the product search error and console log product search error. And that's already going to be good, but I'm gonna also do one for searches here, equal searches error, and let's console log it. Let's go ahead and deploy it. And we can look at the BrightData here. Okay, running. Ready. And in the logs, here we have some errors. For example, this one says, yes, row level security policy. That's a permission policy. That's a permission issue. Let me think. If you have in the create client authorization of header, what if I'll put the service role in the off header? What if I will just take this one and put here as a, and say that the request that you're doing, do them from the name of the server, like as a root user. Now, if I start scraping again, ready. If I go to the logs now, did it solve a problem? Null, 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 which means that if I go to the products table, boom, I should have a list of products with their information, with their information fetched from the database. And what I can do now is on the page of my search, where is it? In application search ID, I can go ahead and besides the search, I can have also a list of products. Products, set products, use state, and I will do the same Supabase search. Let's do Supabase dot from products. The ones I will select everything, obviously, all the columns, I mean, where the search ID, you see they have, oh, they do not have a search ID. Okay, where, so I would need to do it through product search. Here we have search ID and we have async, which means that I'll look for product search. Table is called product search. So I'm going to do product search, and where the product search has no search ID. So search ID is equal to this ID. Let's do .then data and set products with data. But the problem is that we are searching for product search. This one just has the async to the products, but it has that link to it. And when we are selecting the columns, we can query also the links of the products, links to it, products, and we can take all the fields. And here we're going to access them through data.products. Initially is going to be empty array. And I can remove this one. And if I will go to what, iPhone? What happened there? Let's try to do here. Which one was it? I think it was the first one, yeah? iPhone. Let's do a dot catch. Console log data and error. What's happening here? Clean. Why am I signed out? And now if I go here, it has data about products, but it's called async products. Oh, I need to map. I need data dot map. Let's map through data and take only the data dot products. And now, boom, this is the data that we scraped specifically for these items, for this search iPhone. And we can do the same, for example, for MacBook. Let's do a search, MacBook M3. I'm gonna start scraping. And it would be nice to subscribe to automatic updates, and we're gonna do that later. But now let's see what's happening. This is running for MacBook Pro. And in a second, we should have data scraped from Amazon about this search. Whew, that was challenging, but with this, we have our, where is it? We have our second function ready here that is waiting for BrightData to call it. And whenever BrightData gives us the data back, we are storing it into the database so that we can later take the information from the database whenever we need it later. For example, now if we see that it's ready and I'm gonna reload my application, for example, like this, come on, MacBook M3, if I go here, we see the data scraped from the internet. Can go ahead, open directly Amazon to this specific item that we have in our application. How awesome is that? All right, that was it for today that we managed to do in 4 hours. I still have a lot of things that I wanted to show you, and let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to do part 2 of this project. Because in the part 2, actually, we're definitely gonna do it next week. So I'm just gonna spoil a couple of things that I want to show you how to do in part 2. First of all, I want us not to have this start scraping button. I want to automatically start scraping whenever a new search arrives in the database. As soon as it arrives, we start scraping. Then I want to subscribe to data changes so that I don't have to reload the application. I can just start the scrape, I can see like a loading indicator, and then boom, the data appears there whenever it's ready. For that, we need subscription and real-time data. After that, I want to create another table that would store product history, the price history, so that we can see how it changes over time. We can take this information and put it on a graph to show how it changed over time. I also want to be able to mark a search as tracking so that we can run it automatically. We can run the scraping every single day, and if there is a new price, send a notification to the user. The notification, maybe we can send it through email, but it's also something that we could explore. So these are just some things that we can do. Obviously, we can do a lot more, but this would be really powerful to have this price tracking as close to a real-world application as possible. But that's going to happen next week, so make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, not to miss that video. Thank you very much, BrightData, for sponsoring this video. It was really awesome to have access to this data that otherwise wouldn't be possible to get through a very easy to use API. Yeah, everything works super fast. I'm amazed how easy it is to unlock data that we wouldn't have access to. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye, guys.